Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. I don't know why my dance music was not working this morning or just now, but that really sets the mood. At least it really helps me like get into the groove here. So, I don't know where it went missing to, but we are going to have a good time today. I am Khara Plicanic and this is Creative Pro, and today we are going to be talking about working with 3D stuff in Photoshop, which I will tell you right off the bat, I am not a 3D wizard. Usually, when I enter into like a 3D design interface, I usually panic a little bit, and I have a feeling that it's a similar story for a lot of people. So, I've been really playing around with the new 3D Substance viewer that is currently in beta, and it's part of Photoshop beta. And it's actually really cool. Like, even I can do it. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. In fact, this is what we are going to be building. So it's a very simple, like, promo piece, or I don't know, it could be a movie a poster, what have you. But the popcorn bucket itself is a 3D object that we are going to, I guess, skin or wrap. We'll wrap a design onto it. And then those glasses that you see are also 3D objects. And this is all free stuff. And I'm going to show you how you can access these files from Adobe Stock's free collection, and then I'm going to show you how you can manipulate them and put them into a scene like this. The text that you see that says pop, that is something that I actually created in Illustrator. It's super simple, even if you're not an Illustrator person. It's very easy. And then you work with it in Photoshop the same way you work with all these other 3D objects, which is basically as simple as working with a smart object, which you may already be used to. So that's what we're going to do today. Pretty cool, right? So we're going to start by pointing out that I will be working in Photoshop beta. This is the free public beta, so it's no like special access or something. It's just regular old beta. So I'll show you how you would get that on your system. You will also need the 3D Substance Viewer application, also free right now, also in beta. And then I'm going to show you where you get these free assets from Adobe Stock itself. And then we're going to go about composing our scene, and I'll show you how to work with these pieces. And adding some 3D text. If we have time, I'll show you how I made it in Illustrator. It's really simple. And then bringing it into Photoshop. And then if we somehow have extra time, we can talk about how you can generate some of your own 3D models. And that is as simple as using AI. You can actually just prompt it with a text, but the options right now, it looks like, are fairly limited. Another option is to jump into Project Neo, which is another Adobe magic toy box that is web-based. And so if we get time, we can jump into that today too, and at least have a look around. So good stuff. So let's check in with the chat here. I see some familiar faces. Hi, Teresa and Brad. Dan, I assume that is you, that I actually know in real life too. Heidi is here. We've got Captured Alive. Oh, that's Dan tuning in from Chicago. And Heidi says that she has minimal experience with 3D, and that she had taken an entry-level Houdini class last semester, and that it was very heavily based on engineering terms and stuff. So she says that's not her strong suit. I would agree with that for myself. Um, it's tricky, and I don't know what it is about the typical 3D workspaces tend to just freak me out. So, if you guys are feeling similar, you are in the right place. So, that said, let's just dive in and talk about how we do all of this. So, first of all, you want to make sure you have Photoshop Beta, which is accessible from your Creative Cloud application. So if you open up your Creative Cloud application and then go down here to Apps over here on the left, and then up here, you'll notice there is a category for beta. And so all you have to do is install Photoshop Beta. So I've already got it installed, so my button says open, but yours would say install. And then we want the Substance 3D Viewer, which is right here. So you would also just click to install that, and that's it. And it just happens. It just works, and then you are ready to go. So I've got a document set up here. It doesn't have any 3D magical stuff in it yet. I just have a background with a very simple gradient fill. I've got another little gradient, just adding a bit of a highlight. I have a little burst graphic that we'll add later. But that's it for now. I have some popcorn. This is not 3D popcorn. This was just from a free stock photo on Adobe's site. And I already just made a selection of these 3 puffs and dropped them in here so we could save some time with that. And then we have some fun text extras that we'll turn on later. But we've got our document here. And so our first step is that we really should pop over to the browser and talk about where you get these assets. So right now I am looking at stock.adobe.com. So this is their stock site, and I'm logged in with my Adobe ID, which means I can come down here to the search bar, and there is actually a category here for free. You'll notice there's also one for 3D, but if we just specifically want to look at free 3D assets or free any asset, we want to change this to free, and then I'm going to leave this blank and I'll just hit return. And it thinks I'm a robot, probably because I spend so much time here. Oh, and I can't even do the puzzle. There we are. Now it let me in. I spend a lot of time on the stock site and I download a lot of assets, and one of these days they're going to cut me off, I'm sure. All right, but so right now we're just looking at all the free assets. So what we want to do is come over here and specify the 3D assets. So up here, we're looking at the free collection of 3D assets, and my friends, look at this. There's over 1,100 results. And each of these things in here can be, totally manipulated. So you can change colors, materials. Obviously, you can rotate it around and put it in any kind of position that you want. So there's really a lot of neat stuff in here, and I've built some silly scenes just from combining these things. And it's very cool. But in this case, we are looking for popcorn. So I'm going to search, actually, let's type movie. I think that brings up, yeah. So here is the 3D popcorn bucket, and here are the 3D glasses. So all we have to do to download them is click the license button. You can see I've already done that. And so then what happens is it gets downloaded onto your system as a zip file. And when you unzip it, then you'll see a folder named with the stock file. I added popcorn here because I wish they actually did that, because otherwise when you just download a bunch of objects, they all come in a folder with the ID name, and it's kind of hard to find what you're looking for. So I added popcorn, and then these are the 3D glasses. So when we get in here, we have this folder, and there's just all these texture bits in here. So we're going to ignore that for right now. Then there are a couple of other files, and then this is the one we want. This is the .obj file. So what we can do to get this into Photoshop, we have a couple of options. One, in Photoshop, we can just choose File, and I'm going to choose Place Embedded, and then I'm going to navigate to that popcorn file. And again, I'm looking for the .obj file. And then I'll hit place. And it'll take a minute and it's going to drop it in. And look at that, we've got popcorn. So I'm going to just set that transformation, just bring it in. And there it is. But you'll notice I can't really do anything with it besides like move it around. I can't, even if I like transform it or something, I'm just doing normal Photoshop transform stuff. So nothing too impressive or helpful yet, other than we have a nice bucket of popcorn. But you'll notice that that came in on its own layer, and it has the little smart object icon here. So it is like a smart object, but it's a 3D smart object. So what that means is when we're ready to work with it, we are going to double click on that little icon, and whoa, look what just happened. We got the Adobe Substance 3D Viewer. So this is how we work with these models in Photoshop. So it's like a smart object would open in a .psb file, and you work with it there, and then you save it and close it, and then those changes show up in your document. In this case, we've got this OBJ file that comes in as a smart object, but when we double click it, instead of opening in a PSB file, it opens in this 3D Substance Viewer. And here's where we can work with it. And what's nice is it shows us the view here with all of the layers below it. So we can move it around and manipulate it within the context of our composition, which is pretty cool. So what do we have here? First thing I guess I should point out is we can now move it around in 3D space. And there's a couple of different options. Right here, we can tell it what kind of mouse we're working with, or what is our input device, because that tells you then what keys to press to maneuver things properly. So I'm actually just working on my laptop because that's how I roll. So I'm using a trackpad. So it's showing me down here that I can orbit my view by doing a 2-finger drag. So you can see, look at that. I can look at the bottom of the popcorn bucket. I could turn it upside down. It could be shooting out at us this way. We can do all kinds of things. So that is how we can orbit it. We can also move it around. If I hold the space bar down, I can then click and drag to move it around. And you'll notice that if I drag it like down here, you see how it's getting cut off at the bottom? I'll explain that in a minute. But basically, all of these objects exist within a frame. And so just like an InDesign or something, or even in real life with a photo, if you drag the photo beyond the frame, it's not going to show up. But we can address that in a minute. So we can orbit and we can spacebar drag to pan things around. And then we can dolly it forward and backwards by just pinching and zooming, at least for me on the trackpad. It's a little different if you have a mouse, you can use your scroll wheel and all that kind of stuff. So that's cool, but you see that it has this frame around it. So we could also rotate it this way. But the frame is going to cut off the view. So one of the things that can be really helpful is that once you have your item in here and you have it selected, and we're looking here under the composition settings, there's a button that says fit frame to canvas. So when we do that, then as long as I don't drag the frame, I can move it around and now it's not going to get cut off anywhere. So I don't even remember how big I had it. Maybe something like this. But so that's the composition, right? So over here under composition, that's what we've been playing with. Let's look over here at environment. So one of the things that's kind of fun in environment is, I don't know why I get really excited about this, but there's a ground plane enabled. And when you pop that on, you get a shadow, a cast shadow in your environment. And that just makes me happy. Like as a photographer, I just really like that. The other thing that you can do here in the environment controls is you can adjust the rotation of the lighting. So right now this is set to a value of 0, but if I click and drag this to the left, you'll see that the light source moves to the left, thereby putting the shadow on the right, and vice versa. And you can move the light all the way around. So kind of nifty. Very fun. But I think for this, I'm going to leave it pretty, maybe we'll just something simple, like pretty much where the default was. So not getting crazy with it yet. But let's talk about what's under this appearance panel. So if we click on appearance, this is where we could actually go in and we could make this, instead of being like a paper popcorn bin, it could be made out of metal. You could have it be leather. You could have it encrusted in diamonds. There's so many possibilities. But you can also put your own designs on it. So I'm going to select the bucket itself versus the popcorn. We'll get to that in a minute. But the bucket itself, if I select it right here, it's going to pop open in this appearance panel with all the different appearance properties. And right here where it says base color, if I click on that, we are seeing that there is a ping file that is being used to create that base color. Now, if you remember, if we go back to Bridge real quick, remember this? And I was like, there's all these funny graphics in here that's like, what are these things? This is where the different textures and colors and things are stored. So this graphic right here is the one that is being referenced right here to create the paper texture of the bin. But we can also replace it, and we could replace it with a different color, or we could replace it with a different graphic. So that's what I'm going to do, because we're going to pretend that maybe somebody who is a surface designer is trying to get their product onto, I don't know, a popcorn container. So we're going to see what that would look like. So what we can do is in here, there's a little folder button. And when I click on it, I can now navigate to, where did it go? I can navigate to my little pattern file that I made here. And this was also just like a free pattern tile that I downloaded from Adobe stock, and I exported it into a ping. So I'm just going to click open. And now look at that. This pattern is now wrapped around that 3D popcorn bucket. That is so cool and so easy. So you could get in here and play with all of this. And honestly, it's a lot. It's still very simple, but it's a lot. So I'm going to let you enjoy that on your own time. But this is a look at how we would put in a graphic to wrap around the object. Let's also talk about the popcorn itself, which I don't know about you, but it is really yellow. It's a little really just too yellow, I think, for me. So I'm going to go back. I've selected it here in the little viewer. Then I'm going to click that base color option. And instead of referencing this image, I'm going to click color. And then I can just use Adobe, typical color picker. And I'm just going to pick like a light yellow that maybe is a little less neon. And I think that looks good. And so now we can see that our popcorn is looking pretty good. All right. So I think that was kind of it for the popcorn. Simple, right? So we went to File, Place, and we placed it as an embedded file. And then it comes in basically as a smart object. We double clicked to open the smart object. And instead of being a PSB file, it opens up in this Substance Viewer where we were able to change the composition and rotate it all around and all of that. We went into the environment and added a ground shadow and can play with the lighting. Sometimes it also really over brightens it. So maybe we want to dial that down a little bit. And then we went into the appearance and selected the container itself and changed the graphic, and we selected the popcorn and changed the color. So let's say that we're happy with this now. How do we get back to Photoshop? So there's a little button right here that just says to Photoshop. So we click on that, and now we're back in Photoshop, and our bucket is in the position that we just created it. It's got the wrap around it, and our popcorn isn't neon anymore. So that's looking pretty good. Let's repeat this process with those 3D glasses. So I'm going to come back up to the File menu, and again, we'll choose Place Embedded. But this time I'm going to go into the folder that came as a zip file that I unzipped, and that has all these different bits and bobs, including another folder with more textures and reference images and things, materials. But what I want here is that OBJ for object file. So we'll go ahead and click Place, and it takes a little minute. And now we have our 3D glasses. Now, look how fun this is. I mean, you can see through them. Like, it's just, I don't know. I love it so much. All right, so I'm going to press return to set them in here. But of course, I want them to be floating around, like popping off the page, kind of. So I need to maneuver this. So I'm going to go by double clicking it here. Now it will open up, and because it is on one of the top layers in the layers panel, we're able to see all those other layers below. So now I can, let's make this under composition. We're going to fit the frame to canvas, and then I'm going to use my fingers to pinch that down into position, and then I can spacebar drag the glasses without dragging that frame all around it. So let's see, how did we have those? I'm not sure. I spent a lot of time figuring that out on my sample. So I'm trying to match it, and I don't know if it will be, if I'll do as good of a job. Maybe like that, maybe like here. And then what we'll do, maybe we can, I don't know if that piece should be behind the bucket or not. We'll see. But anyway, so there is that. And let's see the lighting. Let's go into environment, and we'll make the lighting similar. Forget what it was exactly. Kind of looks more like it's coming from the right, isn't it? All right. So maybe something like that. All right. And then when we're happy with it, we'll send it to Photoshop. Pretty cool. And then let's make another copy, and then let's hope I do this right. But if we right click and choose new smart object via copy, I think it will separate them so we can manipulate them separately. I don't recall how I did this the other day. Let's hope that works. All right, so we're going to put one more in here. So I'm going to double click this one, and then hopefully it will be independent. There we go. So let's go back to our composition section. Composition, there we go. I'm going to fit the frame to canvas, and then I'll move it up, rotate it around, dolly it maybe a bit. And I forget how I had these coming off. Something like maybe like this. All right, and let's see, let's go to the environment, and we'll adjust our lighting till it looks right. I don't know. That looks good. Okay, we're going to go with it. What else do we need in here? I think that's it. And we'll send that over to Photoshop. Okay, so that is our scene so far. Let me jump over and see how you guys are doing in the chat. And oh, Brad, I love that. I didn't even spill any popcorn. Thank you. You're right. Well, I practiced. I practiced. Our own Teresa Jackson says that she's done a couple of courses on Adobe Dimension, but no 3D expert, right? 3D is like so intimidating. I don't know why. It just kind of makes me go, oh, what is that? But so I'm trying to make it feel accessible, and I was really happy with this composition that I came up with because I feel like it makes it look, I don't know, approachable and like friendly and not too overwhelming. So good stuff. Okay. Well, if you come up with more questions or challenges that you've run into, pop them into the chat and we will come back to that. All right. So let's see. The other thing that's really cool now is that we have all these things in here, but we can still manipulate them as regular Photoshop objects. So I can still come in here and move it if I want to move this over a little bit, and maybe, I don't know if it makes sense to have this go behind the bucket or not, but we can do it. We can also add drop shadows. That's what I was going to do. Let's add a drop shadow to this. And I'm going to, let's see. Are we on the right layer? Oh yeah, it's just super toned down. All right, so here's a drop shadow. Now, my hope is that we can make it look like the glasses have a bit of a shadow that is falling onto the bucket. So I'm gonna play with this angle until I get something decent. I might be kind of really mixing up my lighting angles, but you get the idea. So here we have a bit of a shadow coming off the glasses and landing on the bucket. I'm going to turn it down because that's really intense. So I just want it subtle. But the cool thing is that we can now edit that. So if we come into our layer here, and if I double click and tell it that the layer mask is going to hide effects. So I'm double clicking and just to bring up like the layer options, the layer styles. And then right down here, there's an option that says layer mask hides effects. So I'm going to choose OK there. And what I want to do is hide this shadow everywhere from the bucket. So now I can actually do that with a layer mask. And the easiest way I think that's going to be to do that is we're going to select the glasses because we don't want to mask the glasses. And I'm going to, how did I do this the other day? The object selection tool, and we're going to intersect and catch, hold on. But let's simplify this. I did this last night and it made perfect sense. And now I'm talking in circles. Let's separate this drop shadow from the glasses. So they just have a normal drop shadow. But did you know if you right click on that drop shadow and you choose create layer, it will tell you that not everything can be reproduced this way. That's fine. But look what it did now. It put the glasses, the shadow, on a separate layer. And now I can just hold down the Alt or Option key and clip that shadow so that it only shows up on the bucket. So I think that is just such a fun way to work. So I like that. I like how that is turning out. And let's see if you guys have some more questions coming in. I can see. All right. So Heidi says, So this makes it so we don't have to create the actual 3D items from scratch. Yes. So Photoshop had a 3D space before, but I think a lot of people struggled with it. So they've changed things and they've got a whole other 3D generative tools and software. But what this does is allows us to take existing models and then put them into Photoshop and work with them pretty easily. There are other tools you can use for creating 3D models of your own. There is a text to 3D generator, which we can look at. And there's also Project Neo available at projectneo.adobe.com. But that, it's also very simplified, but that's a whole separate live stream, a whole separate video. But we can chat, we can touch on it real quick when we finish this up. So that's great stuff. Oh, and I love that Mike says, awesome tip. He's stealing it for our newsletter. I'm not sure what you mean. The separation of the shadows, maybe? That is my easy tip when I'm teaching and my brain fries and I can't remember how I did it last night with with just masking. But it kind of required like an intersection of selections and it turned my brain inside out. So yes, that's always a good tip. I love that one too. Okay, so let's get in here and yes, the shadow tip. Let's get in here and add some text and I'll show you how this works. So in Illustrator, oh, I thought I had it open. So in Illustrator, I have some text right here and this is just live text and it's in a font called Air Americana, which is kind of fun. And if we want to make this text 3D, it's really simple. We have to convert it to outlines first. So I'm going to press Command-Shift-O. So it's not text any longer. Now it is shapes in the form of letters. And I'm going to change the color. And I know it won't be easy to see because it's white on white right now. But as soon as we do the next part, you will see it. And it will come into 3D. So then we're going to come up to Window, 3D and Materials, and I'm going to choose Extrude, and look at that. Now we have some 3D type here in Illustrator, and we can roll it around and do some various adjustments with it. There we go. So I forget exactly what I had it at in the piece, but that's it. So I'm just making it simple here. So now I have this little 3D text piece and all I have to do to export it is go to my output panel or my asset export panel. So I have it here. You can see I've done this a few times recently. And then I'm just going to take this piece and I'm going to drag it over into the export panel where I'll give it a name and we'll call it Pop Text 3 for some reason. And then I'm going to click at the bottom to export this. And I want to make sure that I have OBJ selected and that this is selected. And then we'll hit export and we'll put it right in here. And that's it. So I can close this now out of Illustrator. And if we go back to Photoshop Beta and we go to File, Place Embedded, and here is our Pop Text 3D that we just made. And we can place it in here. It takes a moment. There it is. I'm going to drag it up here to the top. And just like all those other 3D objects that came over from the Adobe site, we can edit this. So I'm going to double click to open it up. And here it is in this 3D space. And now I can still put it in any direction that I want. I don't think I can further extrude it. So in Illustrator, you can decide, how deep you want it to be. And there are additional options you can play with. So I don't necessarily have those, but I can still recompose it here, which I think is great. So maybe something simple. Maybe we'll rotate it a little bit and have it kind of, I don't know, which way should it pop? I kind of liked it slightly to the left. All right. Yeah. And then we could make it bigger a little bit if we want. And then we'll just send that over to Photoshop. And here is our cool text. And then on top of that, even though it's a 3D object, it's still just an object in Photoshop. So I can still add drop shadows to it. So I'm going to come down here and add a drop shadow. And I'm not going to use global light. And I am going to sample fun color. So my idea here was that I would make the shadow be kind of like that 3D effect where you have like red and then blue. Let me move this. I'm realizing I'm blocking it. So I'm just changing the drop shadow settings. So I'm going to give it a red color and full opacity. And we can adjust the angle. Maybe we'll have this one come down and how far we want it to pop. And then we can add a second drop shadow. So down here, I've already got one. Let me see, I'll trash that and we'll make a new one. So I've got this drop shadow, and next to that, there's a little button where we can add a second drop shadow. And if I target that one, I'm going to change the color to like this bright blue, maybe even brighter. And we'll change the angle to maybe go the other direction. Like that. Maybe the distance is different. And we can toggle back and forth between those two drop shadows that we're working with if we want to tweak them just by targeting them over here on the left. So I've got two instances of drop shadows applied. This top one is the red one and this one is the blue one. And we can even reorder them, I think. Maybe not. Oh yeah, with this button down here. These little arrows. You can't drag them. Apparently, you have to use arrows. But so if you prefer one in front of the other, you can do that too. And there we go. So then we'll click OK. And how fun is that? And then I just added, to finish this off, I added some popcorn pieces that should really be on top of everything but the text. And somewhere in here, I had a little burst in the background. And then of course I was like, let's make it into some kind of a poster. So I put some text on there too. And I just think that is so fun and so beyond anything I would have ever thought that I could have done before. Because sometimes, I'll show you. I'll show you some of the less great stuff that I first was making when I was messing around with all of this. I made some really bad yuck examples. I think they're not great. So here's one. It's fun, but it's like kind of silly. And when we do it, like it's not practical, right? So all of these are 3D objects. The flip-flops down here are free 3D objects from Adobe Stock's website. The little beach chair, same deal. And the little palm tree, same deal. The text I made in Illustrator exactly the same way that I just showed you now. And then I brought it in and, added lighting and all of that in the 3D Substance viewer. And I generated these birds in Photoshop. Those are just AI generation. And also this whole beach scene was just generation. So kind of fun. That's one example. Then I made another example here. I was making a cake for Photoshop's 35th birthday. and, and then I thought, ooh, maybe a surface pattern designer would want to, create a marketing image pitching their designs as being great for gift wrap or something. So this cake photo is a stock photo from Adobe, and the packages are all three just free Adobe objects. And you can even change the color of the ribbons separately from the the wrapping paper itself. And then I and then I AI generated the 35 on top of there. So those are just fun. But I was really happy about this because to me this looked like, oh, this is something that's less silly and more actually real that even I could do in 3D. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Let's pop over. I see another question coming in, and Mike is asking, sorry, I missed this, but did you have to convert the text to outlines? In Illustrator, yes. You have to convert the text to outlines, and then you just go up to that 3D panel and literally drag the extrusion slider, and you have 3D text, and you can export it and take it into Photoshop or wherever else and work with it. So it's really fun. And I encourage everybody to check it out. In fact, let me show you. Let's go back to the website here. So for example, we're in the free collection and we've got it filtered for just 3D objects. But if I type packaging, look at all these different packages that you can add them to your scene, and you can turn them around, you can put them upside down, you can arrange them however you want. So whether you're working with product photography or you're generating an entire scene, and you need, to change the perspective of some of this stuff, you can do it. And then you can put your own packaging on here too. So that is pretty cool. And there's a lot of fun stuff in here from packaging. There's also a lot of bottles and like beauty type products. Like, how fun is this perfume bottle? So that's another one that I've downloaded. I haven't made anything worthy of sharing with it yet, but it has been really fun to play with. And you can experiment with changing the materials on here. And I'll also show you some of these things are materials, not just models. So for example, these are models, right? So that's what you get. But then if you see the ones that are like over here on the left, we can also just search for materials. So they're displayed on a sphere, so you get an idea of their texture and their reflective properties, etc. But these are all materials. So like, how cool is this wicker, like a woven wicker? So you could, design chairs and put materials on it, and it's really there's so much fun stuff in here. I mean, you can really go down a rabbit hole. So I had to like step away at some point the other day when I was playing with all this because it was just really too fun. The other thing I was going to show you before we go is Project Neo. So if you just go to projectneo.adobe.com, you'll end up here. And these are all things that are created with their very simplified 3D modeling tool. And one of the ways you can kind of play with it over here, if you click remixable items, there are some here that you can kind of like start with and then play with. So for example, if I want to remix this rainbow girl here, I'll click remix. So someone else created this, but I can then get in here and, you can move these things all around. I can change it from a ball into a cube. And I am still trying to like work out how all of this stuff works. So, I mean, it's still 3D. You still have you still have all those little like axes and things you have to know what you're grabbing. But like it's pretty amazing that we can get in here and just move stuff around. And there's all kinds of shapes over here, so you can just drag things in and make new shapes. There's type tools, you can change colors, you can blend shapes together. It's really cool, and there's some really nice simple introductory tutorial videos that they have when you first get to the site. So I would definitely recommend that everybody check that out, and maybe another time we can do a live stream on Project Neo, which is very cool. So, yeah, what other questions do you guys have? I see that we have this fun reminder to save $100 on any of our Creative Pro events using the discount code LIVESTREAM. So for those of you who don't know yet all of the amazingness that Creative Pro has for you, we do a lot of live events online, as well as we have a week-long live event happening this summer in Phoenix, Arizona, which is basically like it's like art camp and fun learning camp for grown-ups and for designers. It's great. So we encourage you to check that out. You can learn more about it at creativeproweek.com, and you can save $100 with the code livestream. And also we have an online event happening next month, the Presentation and Design Conference. So if you work with a lot of presentations, maybe in PowerPoint or Google Slides or Keynote or any of that, you can save $100 off a multi-day pass for any of that with that same code livestream. So I hope you guys will check it out and come join us. Lots of good stuff, lots of brilliant people, and fun community, and a good time. So awesome. If you guys don't have any other questions, I think we might be at a good place to wrap it up. This one was kind of a quick and easy, but I hope that you feel inspired about what you can create with these simplified 3D tools. Just remember, you will need Photoshop Beta and 3D Substance Viewer, or Substance 3D Viewer, however they call it. You'll also need that, which is also free right now, from the Creative Cloud desktop app. So yeah, let us know what you make with all these fun tools and what other things you would like to see us cover here on our Creative Pro live streams. And until next time, happy 3D photoshopping. Bye bye. Thanks for joining.